Objective 3 talks about gift basis. So when you get a gift from somebody, property, what's the basis that you have in that asset? Because if you sell that asset subsequently, then you have to calculate your realized gain or loss. You'll know what you sell it for, but you also need to know what your basis is so you can subtract and get a gain or a loss. So when you're given assets, generally speaking, you get carryover basis. Right here, you get carryover basis. That means whatever basis the donor had, that's the basis the donee has in that property. Okay, that's the general rule. But it gets a little bit more complicated if the property's fair market value on the date of the gift is lower than the donor's basis in the property. So in this case up here, the general rule, that's assuming that the property has appreciated. So if an asset's worth $10,000 and the donor had paid $6,000 for it, you take a $6,000 carryover basis. But if the basis is more than the fair market value, then you can't really determine what the basis is until you subsequently sell the asset, until the donee subsequently sells the asset. And so I want you to read these next couple of paragraphs and look at these examples, 17 and 18, to see what happens when the fair market value of the property is less than the basis. Okay, so you will use either the fair market value on the date of the gift as the basis, or in fact, in this last little bit here, you won't have any gain or loss at all to report on your tax return. It won't even be like the transaction. It'll be like the transaction doesn't even exist. The subsequent sale by the donee. So read over that gift basis, kind of a weird anomaly situation there. I don't want to talk too much about it to confuse you, so I think it'll be clear once you read it and look at the examples. Next, it talks about adjustments for gift tax. If the donor had to pay gift tax when they made the gift, this is not something that we're going to deal with. It's a fairly rare occurrence, and I'm not going to complicate this with that issue. Holding period for gifted items is a carryover holding period. All right, so it's treated as beginning on the date the donor acquired the property, it's basically carryover holding period, just like it's carryover basis. However, unless the special circumstance requiring the use of the property's fair market value at the date of the gift applies. So if the general rule applies for carryover basis, then the holding period is also carryover. If not, then the holding period starts on the date of the gift. So if the value is lower than the basis, then you have a new holding period that starts the date of the gift. So these examples do a good job of explaining basis and holding period in the case of gifts. What about property acquired from a decedent? Generally speaking, this is when you inherit assets from somebody that passed away. Here, instead of having carryover basis like you had from in a gift situation, here the value of the property at the decedent's death is the basis that the beneficiary gets in that property. This is called a primary valuation amount. All right, that's the general rule. There is some discussion here about this alternate valuation amount that can be elected by the taxpayer, but it's pretty rare, and it only is allowed if the value of the property has gone down since the date of death. This idea of giving you the basis equal to fair market value of the property instead of carryover basis is called stepped up basis, and it allows the beneficiary to get a higher basis to place on those new assets that person has, because presumably the decedent is paying estate tax through the wrap-up of his estate. So if you pay tax on that property once, the government doesn't think you should have to pay tax on it again by giving a property with a low basis to the beneficiaries. And I think I will continue on the next video.